I'm really happy to be here with you today. Thank you so much for tuning in. And the intention for today is simply but powerfully to get messages for you from Spirit at the time you find this video. Planning on pulling anywhere from 3 to 5 cards, so we'll see what comes out, shall we? All right, here we go. Messages for the viewer, please, at the time they find this video. Messages for the viewer at the time we find this video. Strength in reverse came out to start. Oops. 9 of Wands. Get one more, please. Messages for the viewer. Ooh, this one. 5 of Cups in reverse. 6 of Swords in reverse at the bottom of the deck. Wow, look at that. That's wild. The pinks that are in this 6 of Swords card are just like so beautifully playing off of these little beauties. These are all wildflowers that are popping up in our garden. Isn't that so cute? Oh, look at it. I messed up the arrangement a little bit. Okay, let's get into the story of these cards, shall we? There is an interesting, there's definitely an interesting story coming through. I think I want to start here with the bottom of the deck, which is the 6 of Swords in reverse, and look at under it is the 8 of Cups in reverse. Wow. Wow, you can't make this stuff up because, so the essence that 6 of Swords in reverse was giving me was like a unconscious resistance to change. Okay, so the bottom of the deck to me is typically positively aspected. Not always. I always go with the feeling and the stories of the cards. Another way that I look at the bottom of the deck is just like the underlying essence that's kind of like under the essentially under the messages that want to come out in terms of like, I always think of like these cards that come out here as like kind of the what, and this is kind of the why, okay? So it seems like this reading, if this reading is for you, Spirit would like to bring attention to some unconscious resistance to change that you may have, so that you can break free and move forward. So essentially, like, another way to put it might be that as soon as you're willing to recognize, this is how it's like kind of negatively aspected but kind of positively aspected, because it's almost like as soon as you're willing to recognize that you might have some unconscious resistance to change, then there's going to be so much more available to you. I mean, and that's probably the case for all of us all the time, right? We can recognize like, oh wow, I might be holding myself back, or I might be more scared or more attracted to familiar than I realize. Typically then we can see more possibilities for us. So the 6 of Swords upright is like this card of like moving on to different shores, new horizons, calmer waters. And then under it, when I said like you can't make this stuff up, we have the 8 of Cups, and that's like a walking away card. Okay, excuse me, the 8 of Cups in reverse. So these came out, the 6 of Swords in reverse and the 8 of Cups in reverse. And as I am speaking all of this out, I am remembering that I recently edited and posted a video, and I believe the 6 of Swords came out, and I was like, I said something like, it's giving me 8 of Cups vibes, and that doesn't always happen. So that's ironic, right? Coincidental, synchronistic that these two would show up here again right after posting that video. So what I will do is I will find that video. I will link it up in the description box because I bet there's something in that video for you as well. But regardless, I think there seems like there's some unconscious resistance to change and release that is wanting to make itself known in this video, in this reading, because you're clearly ready to hear it. And the interesting story that's coming through here in these 3 cards I think it has something to do potentially with toxic positivity. that is really what I'm getting with the Strength in Reverse card. So I'm almost getting the sense that like, so either toxic positivity and or almost like this over giving, because I feel like this is like a strong message of like you don't have to try so hard. And for some reason it's like positivity kept coming to me, but not in a positive sense. So more like toxic positivity, like maybe seeing where you're trying really hard to manifest, or you're trying really hard to change, or you're trying really hard to make something work, and you might, so there's like this paradox in this reading, because it's like you might be thinking you're trying really hard, but the underlying energy is actually a resistance to change and a resistance to release. And so there might be something here about looking at where you're trying really hard and seeing if that is actually resistance to change, which sounds wild, right? But can you, like, I think if we're all honest with ourselves, we can probably all think of times where that is the case, right? Like we're doubling down or fixating on trying to change something, but in doing that, we're actually unconsciously resisting change. Is this making any sense? I hope so, because it feels really powerful. And the rest of the story here is like, there's more of like a holding your ground sort of energy. So that's coming from the Nine of Wands. Like instead of like this like toxic positivity, over giving, overdoing, trying to make things right that I'm getting from the Strength in Reverse, it's a more grounded, just like kind of hold your ground energy, which is like it seems like it's almost like the same, right? Like if you're trying to change, it is holding your ground, but can you feel the difference in the energy? It's like a little different. Like I definitely don't typically get this from the Nine of Wands, but what's coming through right now in the story of these cards are like just like a present energy, like a present with you being present with the reality of your situation. And oh my gosh, look at this. Now that I'm like looking at this, the depiction of the Nine of Wands in this particular reading, I'm realizing a couple things. One is, you see how there's this stark difference between, this is almost like past and future, right? And so it's almost like what that's telling me in this reading is like this presence that just this kind of like gentle holding your ground presence with the reality of your situation versus, again, this like toxic positivity, over giving, overdoing sort of energy is what will like shift you from one reality to the other, which is what will actually create the breakthrough. And then these swords like going to the side, like especially this one in the middle where it's like looks like it's pointing to the future, right? It's almost like telling me like this will pierce the resistance to change. So again, there's a grounded present with the reality of things versus like toxic positivity, but there's a holding your ground. So I think maybe if there's people around you, who are not as supportive as you realize or as you would like. And so instead of being present with that reality and holding your ground in terms of your visions and values that are important to you, and then as we hold our ground, that doesn't mean like doubling down in defense. It doesn't mean like because I wonder if when you're toxically positive, you're kind of unconsciously maybe like doubling down on what isn't working. But when we're holding our ground on what like matters to us, right? And we're in the reality of things, that actually gives us flexibility and adaptability. Does that make sense? This feels really powerful. So I hope it does. I just don't know if I'm bringing like, it feels a little messy as it's coming out. So I'm just going to kind of speak it out again and see if we can clarify here. So there's some sort of unconscious resistance to change and resistance to release that would like to make itself present in this reading. Coming up at the bottom of the deck, being the underlying energy that would like to make itself present. And both the Six of Swords and the Eight of Cups are coming up in reverse to tell us that, right? So then the story of these cards is strength in reverse, giving me the essence of toxic positivity. So not true strength. Do you get what I'm saying? Not this like true enduring strength, but like this facade of strength. And as that is being practiced, you might be consciously thinking you're really trying to change something, or really trying to make something work, or really trying to manifest. But what was actually happening at a deeper level, a more unconscious level, is that is actually a resistance to change. Because when we're in that sort of like toxic positivity realm, what happens is we're not in touch with reality. Oh my gosh, and this is so bizarre. Because in the pre-reading shuffle, you know what kept coming out? I thought for sure it was going to come out in this reading. What kept coming out with this was the Seven of Cups. And the Seven of Cups is a card I typically read as fantasy thinking. Wow. This is wild. You just can't make this stuff up sometimes. So, okay, so this is all making a lot more sense, isn't it? I hope so. So the remedy for toxic positivity, for doubling down, is actually just this grounded holding your ground. And that does not mean a doubling down on the fantasy. That means a grounded holding your ground, being with the reality of things instead of the fantasy, which actually makes you very adaptable. And through that process, you are actually breaking through what you feel is keeping you stuck. You're piercing that veil. You're piercing that unconscious resistance to change. The key is being grounded and present with the reality of things and holding your ground on what matters. In that process, look, it's so beautiful. In that process, you've got the Five of Cups in reverse. So what you're doing is you are dissipating any seasons or feelings of chronic desperation, chronic depression. So I don't mean to imply like you're never going to feel sad again. I don't think that would be healthy. But there's just like massive paradox coming at me here, because like the paradox here is it seems like the toxic positivity is actually keeping any feelings of chronic disempowerment, helplessness, depression, sadness, that's actually keeping it in place. So it's like you might think trying to be more positive is positive, and I have been there. So don't get me wrong. I am not laughing at you. I am just like laughing at the human condition and how like funny it can be, how confusing it can be, right? Because you're like trying and you're striving and you're trying to be positive. So why wouldn't that make things more positive? And it's because it is a trying in the fantasy thinking realm instead of that more grounded approach. So it's almost like a willingness to give up the positivity is actually what's going to make you feel more positive and have more positive outcomes. So it's just like, it's like such a beautifully paradoxical reading. And if you're still with me at this point, I think you're a pretty cool human who's like willing, who comes to readings like this and videos like this to understand yourself more versus just either be told what to do or be told like in the toxic positivity sense, like everything's fine, it'll just happen, right? There is a beautiful like uncovering or like a lifting of the veil energy that wants to happen in this reading, which isn't always comfortable, but it is necessary if we do want a more positive experience and we want to move on from feeling stuck. And so I'm just getting this incredibly positive feeling about this reading that if this is resonating and you take this understanding and this insight and you moving forward, what has felt so stuck before isn't going to feel as stuck in the future, in the present, because you'll be putting that powerful energy that you've been giving to more of this fantasy thinking and this toxic positivity, and you'll be putting it more to good use, which means, again, you are grounded in the reality of things, holding your ground with what matters, but being flexible in the process of how things unfold in that grounded state. And so I want to thank you so much for tuning in. This has been a joy to decode. And once again, I think if this reading is for you, you are a very cool human who's willing to sit with the complexities of life and work through it to get more actual tangible results instead of staying in the fantasy of things. And I think that's like, I intend that to be a really high compliment, because I think it's really easy for us all to stay in fantasy thinking, right? And it's been my experience, the more I learn about myself, the more shadow work I do, the more I also learn about just like the shadow of the human, like how is it we can do really awful things. It's usually never because we identify as awful. It's usually because there's some sort of delusion happening, right? And we're doubling down on the delusion. And when true change and true healing happens, and true positivity, what typically has to happen for that positivity to occur is a release of the fantasy thinking. And so I think you just must be such a cool human to be willing to hear this, because it's not easy to release our fantasy thinking, but it also, in my opinion, has also been one of the most rewarding things. Super uncomfortable to give up that coping mechanism, right? But then also like incredibly rewarding, where you actually are, detoxing the deep hurts and painful experiences of your life. And then you're finally able to move on to calmer shores, new horizons, new adventures that this Six of Swords, when it's upright, has the potential to offer. So thanks for being you, and thanks for tuning in.